We've been at the front line in that we've stopped lots of people having to impact the NHS. You know, we've been able to look after people in their own homes. So my plea would be just to support social care properly. So Avenues is, as you said in your introduction, a specialist provider of complex social care for people with learning disabilities, autism and acquired brain injury. And what we aim to do is encourage people to have the best quality of life they can, to live as independently as they can, with as little support as they require, or as much support as they require. And we employ about 1,700 staff and support about 2,000 people.
So there's a big team, which I guess is really helpful in these situations where you need people on board and on hand. But you talked about giving the people that you support a sense of independence. That must be pretty difficult in this kind of current climate. It must be pretty difficult to do that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not straightforward. It's not straightforward for any of us at the moment, is it? So we're all adapting and learning, and we're having to think of different ways of doing everything. But for the people we support, the staff, the key workers, that what they're doing is they're making sure that life remains as ordinary as it can be in what are, as you say, challenging circumstances. And that can mean doing, you know, the simple things like arts and crafts, music, all the things that everyone enjoys, that breaks up lockdown, really. So there's lots of exercise, there's lots of baking, there's lots of music going on. So, yeah.
I mean, that sounds great, because we've all been doing, I mean, I've been baking more banana cakes than you can even imagine this time. So it's great kind of giving that normality and keeping everything as relaxed as possible, right?
Yeah.
But that's not an easy thing. So your key workers, they're clearly brilliant at what they do, but that must be stressful for them to try and, you know, when everything's crashing around them as such as well, to keep that positivity going for the people that you support.
It's really interesting, actually, Jonny, because one of the things that if you talk to frontline support workers, a lot of them will be saying that this is what they do. This is their job. They, you know, they appreciate people standing in the street and on a Thursday and clapping for NHS and care workers, but they don't talk about themselves as being heroes or being special. They're just doing what they do. They're skilled. They've got a range of different techniques. They've been trained. They can bring all of that to the fore in a challenging situation, and they can make the best of it. And that's why, you know, social care key workers are a phenomenal bunch of people.
And I couldn't agree more. I think that that's a kind of a common ground that we're finding with key workers. When I spoke to Claire last week, when I spoke to Jess the week before that, I feel like none of these people seem to be realizing what an incredible job that they are doing. You know, the key workers out there are doing their job, yes, but they're doing it in extraordinary times.
Yeah.
And it's the same with Avenues Group. I mean, it's not an easy job to be doing. They have to go to work each day where they are essentially putting their life on the line. Now, has anyone ever kind of expressed that fear to you as CEO? Has, you know, how have you dealt with that?
Certainly, when our support staff are talking to their line managers and talking to their colleagues, they talk about the risk. They talk about the fact that, you know, they are working in an environment where potentially, you know, we have had people that we support have contracted CV-19, and we've had people sadly die from CV-19. So our staff know when they come to work, they're putting themselves in harm's way, but they know that there's a value around what they do, and they appreciate that they are doing a really valuable job, and that if they didn't do it, the people they support wouldn't get the right support. These are, you know, they choose to work with people that are vulnerable, and for that reason they bring a whole set of skills, and that sort of sense of wanting to make things better. It's
completely heroic, it's completely selfless. And I mean, you mentioned that there were 1,700, you said 1,700 staff, right? That's a big team. What are the kind of the range of different things that they may do for the people that you support? I know you've touched on it, but kind of give us an idea in this climate and compared to normal, what they'd be doing.
So we talk about a big team, but actually when you come down to it, they work in very small individual teams. So we probably have people working in a team of maybe at any one time about 5 people working alongside each other, working with a group of people. Sometimes it can be a lot less than that. It can be very one-to-one. So it's, for them as individuals, it's about having things planned. So there's a lot of planning goes on. There's a lot of preparation goes on. And it's about being inventive and being innovative and knowing the people you support, knowing their interests. You know, we have people that are, you know, big football fans. We have people that are big dance fans. They love their music. We've got people that really enjoy just being out in the fresh air. So for our staff, it's about knowing the people they work with, knowing the things that make them happy, knowing the things that actually they have to do. So, you know, we all have to do our washing, we all have to do our cooking, and making those things as part of a normal day, and making sure that in doing that, the people we support are having the best time they can.
And I guess depending on the person that they're supporting as well, they may have a particular that they like each day that they can't necessarily do in these times. That must be a difficulty that some of your workers face, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, particularly if you think about some of the people we support with autism, routine is very important to them. Knowing what's happening next, knowing what's coming next is really important to them. So what the staff team are having to do is adapt. They're having to think about, you know, so maybe somebody that particularly likes swimming, that might not be an opportunity that they can do at the moment. So the staff team will be looking for alternatives. You know, there isn't an alternative to going to the local swimming pool, but it might be that they can find some other activity that they might enjoy as much.
And what about things like, you know, a lot of these people that you support are vulnerable. So going out and getting shopping isn't necessarily an option for them. They have to shield. So how do your workers, your key workers, get around that one?
Shopping is part of everyday life for people that we support ordinarily. And for some people, it's a really important part. You know, going out and, you know, just browsing around the shops like you or I would be is really important. So what our support staff are doing is, where it's essential supplies, they are arranging either for deliveries or they're arranging to go out and do the shopping when they're on shift. If they can, and it's safe to do so, and it's important to the person we support, they may find a way to take them out to the shops. Now, it might not be that they can actually go around Tesco's or any other supermarket, but what they might do is they might decide just to take them for a walk down the high street so they can have a conversation about the shops. They can just talk about what's going on. So our staff, by and large, will make sure that there's plenty of food, that the services are properly well stocked, and that everything's got their favourite treats, like we all need in the cupboard at the moment. But beyond that, what they'll also do is make sure that if somebody really likes shopping, it's not missing from their routine as best they can. It's all about adapting.
And again, it's an incredibly selfless thing, once again, from your workers, because actually, you know, they need to do their shopping as well. They need to, but they also need to keep themselves safe. So in terms of the whole social distancing thing at the moment, that must have been a problem as well, because you have to remain, you're 2 meters apart. In your line of work, that's impossible, right?
Yeah, it's not possible. It's not practical. I mean, particularly where we support people who've got very complex needs and maybe quite often combined with some physical needs. They need support with their personal care, with toileting and that type of thing. So, you know, 2 meter distance is not possible. Our staff are trained. They know all about infection control. You know, that's something that they understand from day one of their work with us. And I'm sure we'll come on to talk about PPE at some point. But they know all about managing that. But they have a job to do, which is to put the welfare and the dignity of the people we support first and foremost. And they'll do that in a safe way.
With regards to PPE, how are you supported? Are you supported by the government, or how do you get your PPE?
Organisationally, what we'd ordinarily do is we have suppliers that we would order our stock from, and that's continued right the way through the current lockdown arrangements. There's been interruption in the supplies. You can imagine right at the very beginning there were ups and downs, and there have been opportunities for us to have stock delivered from a national forum, which has worked okay, not brilliantly. But we are now seeing our normal suppliers stepping back up, so that's okay. And organisationally, we're able to share our resources. So we have some areas of the organisation that haven't had the same impact of CV-19 that maybe London and Kent has seen. So we've been able to redistribute our stock, which has helped. We've got a flag system organisationally, so we have a look every day at what stocks are like across the organisation, and we can move around to respond to that. I think the challenge will be if there's any change in guidelines around masks. You know, we're already thinking about, you know, what sort of stock would we need if there is a general guidance to the public around wearing masks. And I think also we need to think about making sure that our staff are using the right protective equipment, which they, you know, they've all been trained, they know the levels. The confusion, I think, has come from some of the government guidelines, hasn't been as straightforward as it could have been. You know, we've had guidance that's changed quite frequently, and for organisations like us, staying on top of that and making sure the messages get out to frontline staff as quickly as we can is a challenge.
And there's obviously set to be another change this evening. Boris Johnson's going to be speaking at 7, hence why we moved this forward to 6. You know, he didn't want us upstaging him, clearly. But what are you hoping to hear from him? Because there's been some new, they called it slogans, they called it, you know, mottos. They're saying to stay inside as much as possible. They're saying work from home if you can, limit contact with other people. Pretty vague, but also pretty difficult for your key workers to do any of that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting if it is changed in terms of that vagueness as you described it, because we've had a very clear message for the last sort of 7 or 8 weeks. We've very clearly known what the position was and where we stood, and I think anything that changes that and leaves there any room for interpretation is going to see some issues around, you know, weakening some of the arrangements. I think for our staff, for our frontline staff, it doesn't change much. You know, they are still doing what they do. They are going to work, they're doing their shifts, they're doing long hours to make sure that people we support have got consistency of support through all of this. Their commitment is the same regardless of the lockdown arrangements. And actually, I think if you think about the lockdown and everything that goes with it applies for our workers to their home circumstances much more so than it does to their work, because their work is very much the same. Just
going back to the PPE question, in my research I saw that the community has also tried to get involved, and a school in Walderslade. I just thought this is a really lovely story that I'd love you to just kind of expand a bit on if you can.
Well, it's not just Walderslade, actually. We've had support from a school in Dartford as well. So they got in touch to say that as part of their sort of science and tech, they were making face visors. So as a routine, our staff are using the masks that, you know, you see. But obviously where there is somebody that they're working with that has a diagnosis of CV positive, then they do take the, you know, extra precautions, and that includes these face visors. And the school got in touch and said they had some, and would we like them? And we took a supply, which is great. We do have opportunities to get that stuff elsewhere, but to know that somebody in the community has been bothered about it is really helpful. And as I say, Dartford Grammar School for Boys did something very similar. They had science goggles that had been with the side protection that were obviously redundant because the school was closed, and they offered them out to local community organisations that might be able to benefit from them. So we had some of those as well.
I mean, it is so lovely, the community support. That's one of the main things that I guess has come from such a negative situation, is that the communities have come together so much, whether it's the clapping for our carers on a Thursday, you know, whatever it may be, people are coming together. And have your key workers felt that in their communities?
Certainly in some of the services we've sort of seen, you know, as you know, at the VE Day, we had the celebrations on Friday, and some of the services were able to join in with sort of properly socially distant street parties. So they've been able to come together. I think our key workers, if I'm being honest, I think our key workers are not as valued by society as they should be. You know, if I could stand on a platform today, you know, they are not valued as much as they should be. They provide an essential service. And at the moment, everyone's talking about, particularly social care. They're talking about social carers as being heroes, you know, being really sort of brave people. I hope that carries on after this, because we've always been a bit of the poor relation for the NHS, and I want that enthusiasm for people realising what we do, what goes on in care homes, the support that's out there for people when they're at their most vulnerable in the community. I hope that sticks after CV19 as a distant memory.
If you had a message to Boris Johnson about your key workers, about the community as a whole, what would you say to him?
Fund social care properly. At the moment, social care is funded on a shoestring. We are, a vital part of the infrastructure for supporting people, particularly in CV19 circumstances. We've been at the front line in that we've stopped lots of people having to impact the NHS. We've been able to look after people in their own homes. So my plea would be just to support social care properly. It's, we've spent many years waiting for a solution around how to fund social care, and we're still no closer. And unfortunately, unless the government starts to take social care seriously, and unless they're prepared to invest in it, it is going to become a very, very poor relation. Recruitment is a challenge, because it is perceived as low pay and low value, and yet, how much more important can a job be than to look after your loved one for you when they need that support and care that you can no longer provide at home, or is not right for you to provide at home.
Is there anything that you would like to say to your staff personally?
Oh, there's many things I could say to our staff, Jonny, but they've been phenomenal. I'd love to be able to meet each and every one of them and say thank you for what they've done over the last few weeks, because the way they've responded, the calm, pragmatic, level-headed way they've responded has been phenomenal. And for me and for the management team at Avenues and our board of trustees, it's been so much easier to weather this crisis knowing that we've got this fabulous bunch of people at the front line doing the job that they're paid to do calmly, collectedly. And there's not been any sense of panic. There's not been any agitation. They've just calmly got on with the job. They've been phenomenal. I couldn't thank them enough.
Well, I think it's so refreshing and lovely to hear a CEO speak so passionately about their staff as well. I'm just going to ask this one that's popped up here on Instagram. It's from Matt Ski. He says, what is one's societal attitude? Does either you or Joe hope to come out of this? So what do you hope societally the attitude will change?
I would hope so. I would hope that social care is recognised for the contributor that it is towards the society that we live in. We've come a long way from the big institutions where people with learning disabilities were locked away and out of sight, but we've still got a long way to go to make sure that people with learning disabilities can be, proper citizens, active citizens in their local community. But I think from the point of view of CV19 and the impact that's had, I do hope that it's raised the profile of social care. There's a lot of talk about social care at the moment. There's a lot of publicity about key workers, about carers, and I hope that continues, because only by that recognition and that value will we ever get social care to the professional platform that it needs to be.
I think one thing that's clear throughout this whole chat is your passion for what you do, for the industry that you're in, and for the people that work with you. So thank you so much for spending your Sunday evening chatting. Thank you so much to Avenues Group for lending you out to me to have a little chat this evening. And more than anything, thank you to all of you key workers for everything that you've done during this time, what you continue to do as well. So thank you for watching. And Joe, have a great evening. Take care. Look after yourself.
Thank you.